Welcome to Empowered. I'm your host, Jessica Flynn of thejessicaflynn.com, and our show is on a mission to unleash local wisdom for widespread impact. We're committed to inspiring positive change in our community and beyond. And today we're joined by someone whose heart and hustle are deeply rooted in both family and community. Maniva Armstrong is a realtor, mother of two, a fitness enthusiast, and a passionate advocate for autism awareness. When her son was diagnosed with autism in 2018, it changed the course of her life and sparked a mission to support other families walking a similar path. Through her real estate work across Simcoe County and the York region, Maniva not only helps families find a place to call home, she also donates $200 from every transaction to Autism Ontario, creating meaningful impact with every sale. She's here today to share her story, the realities of navigating life with a child on the spectrum, and the powerful ways we can show up for each other as a community. So let's welcome Maniva Armstrong to our show. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Jessica. I'm very honored to have this opportunity to be here today. Thank you.
It's been an incredible journey already just in our pre-call to learn about your story and your family. And so I'm wondering if you can share with us, so your son Brody is 9 years old.
Right.
And his diagnosis came in 2018. What was life like before that diagnosis? What were some of those early signs where you knew you might need some support?
Yeah. So for Brody, as a baby, and throughout the first year, he was just like what we would say a typical baby, going through the growth development, the sitting, the walking. He was a happy-go-lucky baby, very calm. He was, in fact, like a very, very easygoing a baby. And
he was your second, right?
He was my second.
You had your daughter to kind of compare him to as well.
So my daughter's 2 years older, exactly 2 years older than him. And so I've gone through that already once in the experience. And in fact, I was like, wow, he's doing really great. My daughter was colicky, so I experienced that difference with her. And then when I got back into work after my maternity leave and we got him into the daycare, things were going okay. And then a sudden shift started happening when he reached about the 15, 16 month. I started getting phone calls from the daycare. They were saying that he seemed to be stressed out. He was crying a lot. They couldn't soothe him or find a way. And that just seemed to progress as the time was going on. And as we got into 16, 17 months, I was getting more phone calls at work to say, we're having a hard time with Brody. You need to come pick him up. We just can't seem to calm him. We have other children that, we need to care for. And so I couldn't really figure it out, at the time, into the initial stages. It's just that it just seemed that I was like, okay, well, he's crying, he's, other babies cry and stuff. So the small things were just, the simple things that started out were just that, him isolating himself a little bit at the daycare at that age, crying more, having a little more anxiety going to the daycare. And it seemed to progress to the point where when we went out to places, that anxiety seemed to be at the grocery store, at the community center.
So not just at daycare anymore.
It started to escalate as he continued on into 16 months, 17 months. And I had to take him out of the daycare, which was a home daycare. So here I have two kids now that I have to find. At one just 15, 16 months, and then at one that's just over 2 years old, another daycare. And then, so what happened within a couple of months, I went through 3 different daycares, trying to find one, and that's where a little bit of maybe the red flags were starting to go off, is that, why is this happening, and why isn't he able to calm himself, or why aren't the daycares able to handle it, since it's their job?
Yeah.
And so that was kind of like going through my mind, is like, this is your profession. How are you not able to care for them appropriately while he's there? And as time continued on, it just seemed to be a behavior that progressed and escalated to the point where he was now so stressed, or his anxiety was so high, that self-harming started to happen. There was a lot of situations where he would be, hitting his head off floors, a wall, headbutting me, doing things when he was in that stress or in that state of anxiety. So that challenge was, finding, daycare that was able to support him and his needs at that time was very challenging for me. And so as this continued on for a few months, I went in to speak with my family doctor, and I was like, I'm really concerned about his behavior because, we can't seem to have people in our house because it stresses him out. I can't take him to places, it seems to stress him out. And then now he's really harming himself, and that's stressing me out.
Yes.
Because
and you're working as a police officer at the time?
Yes. So at this time, I was a police officer just about an hour outside of Barrie, and so I would be, going to work and getting into my job, and then I would have to leave and drive back to pick him up from the daycare. And so it was a bit of a stressful cycle trying to maneuver my job, my career, and then also to figure out why is my one child, I've never had any issues with daycare, but all of a sudden I have another child who is not being able to feel comfort through his day.
And you're challenged to find support. So what was the conversation then with your family doctor, and how did things then move along towards a diagnosis?
The initial one was how, these are the symptoms, this is what's happening. It's a completely change in his disposition and his personality. And the response was, well, he's meeting his
developmental milestones.
Exactly. There's nothing wrong. And then I would go, okay, so then I'd be going through the motions and experience this, and it just continuously seemed to heighten, where, I was really afraid for his well-being because it was, if he was in a state of anxiety, his head would just smash off our floor or off our
And he's under
walls.
2 at this point.
And at this point, we're at the 17, between 16 months to 18 months in this realm of, these behaviors happening. And so I gave it a little bit more time, and then I went back to my family doctor, and I went back with this saying, I'm fearful for his safety and I'm fearful for mine because he's actually hitting me. I think there's something wrong. And again, it was like, no, he's too young for any diagnosis or to be able to determine anything. Like he's not even 2 yet. And again, so then things, I'm talking with family members, these are you're starting to stress a little bit. Your friends are seeing this behavior, and again, the commonality out there for people is to say, well, he's a boy, and boys have these behaviors, and they're a little bit slower than girls, and you can't compare, apples to oranges, and you're still a fresh mom. Maybe there's some postpartum that's maybe making you feel that there's more things happening.
What a confusing and difficult time.
Yes.
So how did you then? What happened to get to 2018 where you get a diagnosis?
So fortunately, I was at work one day talking about this and how stressful it was, and I had somebody mention a local service and how about just going beyond the doctor and go to the local service and maybe have an assessment done. So I ended up doing that. I reached out, and I'm not sure if I can speak of the local service.
Sure, yeah.
So I reached out to Amanda Becerowicz with IBI Behavioral Services in Barrie. And she was really great at connecting and making an appointment. We had done two small assessments. And during that time frame, she asked a series of questions about our background, about his background, and then we just did some observations. And ultimately, she led me onto a path of another service in Barrie. It was Speak Freely. And the objective there was to begin services. It would be paid out of pocket, but the objective was to start getting some information about these observations and about Brody's behaviors, to start to build up a bit of background, to be able to go back to our family doctor to say there is some concerns or some red flags or things that should be looked at a bit better. So we did that for a period of 6 months, and basically those services really just was me with Brody sitting in a room with one of the service providers and trying to build that rapport with him, because his anxiety was so high that we really couldn't do a lot.
And I also imagine to give a third or fourth opinion and advocate for the behavior that you're seeing at home.
Right.
So then to go back to
Exactly.
the doctor and say, look, it's not just me, it's not
Yes.
postpartum, necessarily postpartum, it's not boys will be boys.
Right.
I need help.
Exactly.
And, yeah.
So thankfully, these assessments that we had early on with IBI Behavioral Services pointed out some potential red flags for autism, but also for speech impairment as well.
Okay.
So after another 6 to 8 months, we were able to go back to my family doctor. I was able to provide some documentation. And even at that point, my family doctor was resistant and still did not want to do a referral to a pediatrician. And I really had to sit there and argue the fact that just because he's now 2 doesn't mean we should stop looking at what this other information is providing us. Why are you stopping me from seeing a pediatrician? Would we not want to rule this out as opposed to let it go even further? So in a nice way to say it, I really had to be really strong and firm, because she wouldn't have made that referral. Thankfully, the referral was made, and that took us almost another 8 months to get to that pediatrician. And by this time, Brody was about
Just under 3.
just under 3.
Yeah.
And the day that we showed up for the consultation with the pediatrician, she ended up being an hour behind in her appointments, which created a lot of stress for my son.
Yeah.
And she got to see, I mean, we didn't leave, but she got to hear and see exactly what we're dealing with at home and outside of our home. And through that process of the questions, we were able to get the diagnosis that day.
Well, Maniva, I know we're describing you as an autism advocate, but I would say also it sounds like you're an autism warrior and just a parent who has had to blaze a trail in order to get some answers. And after the break, we're going to explore Brody's journey and how well he's doing now, thanks to a lot of the supports that are available in our community, as well as the work that Maniva's doing to make sure that this experience is different for families navigating autism at home. We'll be back soon with Empowered. Welcome back to Empowered. I'm your host, Jessica Flynn, and today I'm having an incredible conversation with Maniva Armstrong, a parent of Brody, age 9, who is on the autism spectrum, and we're learning about your journey. I mean, it was a tumultuous one in those very early years to get a diagnosis. I understand that Brody has grown so much thanks to a lot of the supports that you've connected him with. So can you tell us a little bit about kind of what his week looks like and some of the therapies that have really helped?
Yeah, so you know, I always describe this to people. You have a daughter or a son that's in AAA hockey and you're spending thousands of dollars on their tournaments and their equipment and for them to play in these leagues. Well, as a parent of a child with autism, I'm spending thousands of dollars putting resources and services and therapy into my son so he can develop and grow. But you know, I say you go 3, 4, 5 times a week to practices. I go 3, 4, 5 times a week to different services. And the things that I, you know, had to learn in the early stages is, you know, what will help him. And you have to do research in things like ABA services, IBI services, there's speech therapy, occupational therapy, and then as they get a little bit older, it's about...
Sorry, can you go back? What is ABA and IBI?
So there is a bit of a difference between the IBI and ABA, and I'm not a professional in that area, so I don't...
Even just what the acronyms stand for.
So ABA is Advanced Behavioral Analysis Therapy, and IBI has a different name that I'm not quite as familiar with because it's not a service
Brody's in more the ABA.
In the ABA.
Yeah. Okay.
So it was trying to learn what is the best thing or what do I need for him, and knowing that he was nonverbal. Speech therapy was one that automatically came into mind. But you know, when people think of occupational therapy, I always thought of occupational therapy being for someone who was in a car accident, an older person needing some help for physical impairment as a result of an injury or a medical situation. But really, occupational therapy for kids with autism covers a wide variety of learning and abilities for the kids.
That's so good to know.
It's occupational therapy has been one of our most valuable services that Brody has used. Mind you, they're all very valuable and they all come together in different ways.
Well, and it's not like every individual with autism needs every suite of services, right? So it's still to the uniqueness of the child and where they're at in their journey as well. Yeah,
absolutely. And at different times or different ages, because some of the occupational therapy for Brody at a younger age wouldn't be beneficial as it is as he got a little bit older and could participate in some of the activities that they teach. Things that are another support things that are out there is we have services like social groups for kids, learning how to be around other kids, social cues, how to interact, take turns, patience, things like that. Self-regulation is another group thing that he's participated in.
And those are like, you know, you're an athlete as well. So the way that you describe that I think is so beautiful for other kids who might be going to hockey practice to prepare for the big game. Your son and his peers are going to practice social cues and how to wait in line, how to... for when they're in public, the big game, so to speak.
Exactly,
right?
and that is their big game, because these things don't come easy to them. These are things that have to be taught, and it's repetition.
And practice.
And practice.
Yes. Yeah.
And lots of repetition over and over. So thankfully, you know, as I maneuvered through in the earlier years, I was able to learn of services from other people that I connected with. We were able to use Lindsay Stefanato's Children's Therapy Services here in Barrie, which Brody still attends for speech therapy.
Wow, okay.
He spent time at the beginning stages with Speak Freely. We got into programs that were involved with On Solid Ground for ABA therapy, some like Clubhouse social therapies. We utilized IBI behavioral services out of our beginning stages, and Inclusive Milestones. Brody attended there because there was a tutor program because he needed more support with his academics.
You know all the programs. You've got the ins and outs, right?
So I really, I mean, I don't know everything and I'm still learning, and that's my goal in our community and as a parent is to continue to learn about all of it and share that resources in our community. One of the biggest things I've seen for Brody recently is we put him into Unique Minds Academy, which is one of only a few private schools that have an Ontario accredited academic program with the ABA Advanced Behavioral Analysis support, occupational therapy support, and speech therapy support all in the school.
Wow.
So Brody would have been in grade 4 this year. He has the academic level, maybe a grade 1. The school system will keep pushing them through, and that was causing a lot more challenges and frustration and hardship for him in the public education system. But thankfully, I was able to transition him into this private school this past year, and I could just see a world of difference with his reading, his ability to read, with his ability to print small words, and his ability to make friends.
Yeah, he's got more people who are living in a similar world as his, right? And you all know at home, I'm a huge advocate of alternative education. And I think as much as our public system tries to be everything to everybody, it ends up not being enough to most.
Right.
And everyone is stretched so thin. So while you're discovering all of these resources and community groups and therapies, you also made the decision to change careers so that you could be more present for Brody. So now you've left policing and you're a realtor with Forest Hill Legacy.
Yes.
Can you tell us about, I mean, it's obvious, I think, in how we're speaking that who you are as a parent is just who you are going to show up as every day.
Right.
So what are you doing in your work to help advocate for other families and help the community at large learn more about autism awareness?
Yeah, so so it came to a point where the career that I was in at the time, there was some challenges maneuvering, you know, the needs for my son and for me to be a parent at home. And I always had an interest in real estate, and I just was never able to kind of take that path. And then an opportunity arose, and I decided this is the time for me. And my goal, knowing when I decided to venture into taking the program to be a real estate agent, was that I was going to make it my platform to support my son, but also to support families in our community through my real estate, to kind of spread the word more about autism, to advocate for it, to reach out to all of our services, to share their information. And I knew right away my marketing, my brand was going to be about autism. And so right away I contacted Autism Ontario, and I was able to connect with them, and I kind of gave them my pitch and what my goal and my passion was going to be. And thankfully they were very receptive, and they liked the fact, you know, they were honored to have the fact that somebody wanted to commit themselves to supporting and raise money for autism in Simcoe County and York Region. So the end result is that I am very thankful for the opportunities, because it is these services that I've also been able to reach out to say, you know, I would really like to share this information. I know it's a little bit on my real estate platform, but the goal really is to show our community for people who are just getting into it, or maybe have been in the system and just haven't found the right resource or the right service for their child. Let me share this and let me put it out there for everyone, and be a support system in our community. I
think whether or not you have someone with autism in your life, working with a realtor who's a real champion of community, and knowing that, you know, whatever community you're moving into, you want to understand who's there, what supports are available, and to be that connection. So your Instagram is a great resource right now, where you're kind of doing features on each of these, many of these services and locations. And it's hard to believe, but we're we only have a few minutes left of this episode, and there's so much more to talk about with Maniva, so stay tuned for probably a second episode coming out in the fall. But I'm wondering if you can explain how others, how teachers, friends, employers can be better allies to families navigating, children who are on the spectrum.
So I definitely think we're in a time where autism has become extremely prevalent in our society, and I think it's very important that, I'll go back to my time frame as, working as a police officer, and if you're out in the community and you don't know or understand these kids, you might think they're being defiant, or you might think their behavior is just bad or poor parenting. So it's very important in all aspects, and our Board of Education, that everybody familiarizes themselves a little bit more with the understanding that autism spectrum disorder is a spectrum, and they're not all the same. Everything's a little bit different, but some of the similar things that you might see is avoidance, lack of eye contact, turning around, walking away from you. Those are like little things like that that can be educated to our teachers and to our law enforcement personnel, security, firefighter, all the EMS. I think autism has just become so prevalent, and I think it's so important that people have a little bit of understanding, a little more patience to know that we're not all the same, and people react differently, children react differently, or may not understand. And my son is nearly as tall as me at 9 years old, and by looking at him you would never know.
Right.
But his speech is delayed. So if you were to go up and say, "Hey bud, how's it going?" he may not know how to respond to you appropriately. He might just look at you or stare at you, and then you think he's being rude or an ignorant child.
Right.
Or we're walking down the sidewalk and he doesn't understand spatial awareness, so he's kind of walking towards you and you're thinking, "Don't be so rude, push over." Well, that's not him being intentionally rude, it's him not just understanding
approach everyone with empathy and with love, and there's so much diversity in our communities, and I think as we wrap up this incredibly informative episode, and we'll share some more resources in the link when we share this on YouTube, but definitely check out at Maniva Armstrong on Instagram, because she's on there a couple of times a week sharing about different resources, and we also want to celebrate Maniva, and we've heard Brody with his family just got back from their very first vacation, so things are going very well, and like you said, there's lots to learn and lots to navigate, but we're so grateful that that she joined us in the studio today. Please make sure that if you have questions or need support, that you connect with Maniva on her Instagram, and we'll see you next time on Empowered with Jessica Flynn.